Aloha. Um, in teaching software engineering, I usually have to present concepts through somewhat contrived examples. And this past week, I was working on some code as part of my research, and I just came across this amazing situation where I had a small little piece of code that illustrated a lot of cool software engineering concepts that I think even if you're a newcomer to software development, you can understand and really profit from, and kind of shows you the way things work when you're really trying to do it, outside a homework assignment. So um, I call this drying out React code, and the idea of dry, it's an agile maxim. Don't repeat yourself. The idea is you don't want to have a bunch of repeated code. Um, and the way that you avoid repeating code is by refactoring. So you restructure the system so that you abstract out the code that's common across multiple scenarios, and somehow parameterize it. But how do you really do that? How do you recognize when that's necessary? How do you recognize that sometimes it's not necessary? And and I want to just kind of tell you the answers right at the beginning, so you get oriented to what I'll be showing you when we get into the code. The first thing is that when you have a lot of instances or behaviors in your system that have a very similar structure and behavior, then classes are a great way to abstract out and enforce the behaviors and the state and so forth that are replicated in different contexts. So classes are good for that. Secondly, when you come across duplication, you need to figure out a way, or you should try to figure out a way to avoid it if there's a significant amount of duplication. And then thirdly, as part of that, it's always really helpful if you can separate your presentational code from your actual content. And I'll show you at the end why that made life a lot easier. The other thing I think is very important to understand, particularly when you're in a scenario where you don't quite understand your domain and you're using code to figure out, how it is that things need to work. There's this kind of, balance and cycle, in the development process. Spike solutions are a term that indicates when you're just trying to understand what the domain is. You write code. You don't worry about making it, the prettiest code possible, because you don't quite yet understand what you're going to keep, what you're going to save, what's even going on. And the code that I started out looking at was a spike solution. Okay, so even though we're going to make a lot of changes to it, and look at things that could be done better, in the context of what the developers were doing when they built this code, they were doing exactly the right thing, which is just quickly trying to get to a user interface and a behavior of the system that was close to what was desired. And it's only by having a spike solution first that you can identify what the abstractions are that you need to create, and what you don't. Okay, so there's another maxim which I'll get to the end. You ain't gonna need it. Okay, so sometimes if you don't do the spike solution first, oftentimes you kind of over-engineer your system. You put in generality that actually makes things complicated and doesn't provide value. So it's super useful, in order to be fast. Ultimately, it's good to do a spike solution. You get some behavior, you get to review it, you get to think about it, is this what I want? And then you transition into another phase, which is to now take a step back, look at the code, and say, okay, well, now I know that I want to keep this in some form. What's the best way to do that? So that's what we're doing here. Okay, so let's now look at the system, so you get a sense for what I found. And this is RadGrad. It's a system we've been working on for a number of years. We're working on this brand new version of the system. And we decided in developing it that one thing we wanted to do was have a page which had kind of a checklist of things to do, because how to best use this system is a little complicated for newcomers. And we thought, well, it would be cool if we had a page where we looked at the state of the system, we looked at the state of the user, and we could say for kind of a dozen or so behaviors, hey, this is something you really should think about, or which is the improve item. Or we could say, here's something that's not, mandatory that you think about, but would be a good thing to look at. And that's like the review checklist items. And then at the very bottom, we have ones where, oh, it's great. You've looked at these things, no problem. And so different users will have checklists that they'll have all the same checklist items, but they will be in different states. And as you click on things and move around the system, that's going to change the state of the system. And then this page will change and checklist items will move up into the improve or down into the okay or whatever as the state of everything is evolving. So that was the idea. And so some developers went off and built this page and then sent it out for review. And I took a look at it. And basically, initially, what I was looking at was the fact that this little pink part of the background was not aligning exactly with the edge of the page. And you see there's a couple pixels overlap if you look where my cursor is. And I said, oh, that's bad. I want to fix that. So I went into this code just thinking, I want to fix some CSS. Okay. And so that's where things started. And I'll show you so when I started looking at the code, here's the student homepage. This is the code that actually lays out this page. And it's even if you don't know React or any JavaScript or anything, you can kind of follow along. The idea is that we have all of these instances of checklist items, and we create an instance of them, and we pass the state of the current user, and then we figure out we call this update state method to figure out whether they're in the okay, review, improve state. And then we create a list of the ones that are in improve, the ones that are in the review, ones that are in awesome. And then up here, when we basically map through all the improve items and render them, then we map through all the review items and render them, and then we map through all the okay items and render them. And once you do all that, you get this page with these checklist items, and they're ordered according to the priority or the importance for the user to look at them. So that's basically how this works, and this didn't really change much. This is pretty reasonable code. Okay, but then I started looking at these actual individual checklist items. And actually what I should say first is one thing they did from the beginning, which was a great idea, and very useful to just even making any of this possible, was they created this superclass called checklist.text. And that extracted out all of the shared structure of the system. So they realized all of these checklist items need to have an ability to find out what the state is. You need an ability to update the state. You need to get to know the name, the icon, the title, description, details. So if we look at this, that would be the name, this would be the title, this would be the description, this would be details, this thing here, and then actions would be kind of the stuff at the bottom where you get buttons and whatever you want to do based on that. Okay, so they realized that, and then they had a kind of a render method, the get checklist item, which would actually go ahead and build that little pane that appears on the page. Okay, so really, really great. Okay, that made life as a refactorer way easier, because you start off and say, this is the defined structure, everybody's going to obey it. Now, when you start to look at it, though, okay, so I fixed the CSS right away, but then I kind of started looking at this, and I thought to myself, well, there's a bunch of things here. One is, they're using a string as the they're hard coding a string and referencing it just all over the place to say what the state is, and that was like, that's no good. In TypeScript we have this enumerated type, and we can we can take care of that. But the more the thing that, as I started to look through these checklist items, one thing I realized was that, every single checklist item, all 10 of them or 12 of them, how many there are, they were all overriding the get title method. So in checklist.txt, get title does nothing, right? It just returns a React fragment, which is basically exactly nothing. Oops. So basically all of these checklist items were required to override the get title method. And they all did this check for the state, and then they essentially returned, a string where the string, it had some presentational stuff wrapped around it, but it was essentially just a string. And if you look at career goals and we look for get title here, exact same thing, right? So there was this structural aspect of it that was shared and copied. So you can, if you compare this with this, you can see, they're identical except for the actual string that appears inside this header component. So that's crazy. So, how do we fix that, right? Well, here's how I fixed it. Okay, you can kind of think to yourself, how might I fix it? And what I'll do is I'll switch to a different branch so we can see what happens. And so what happens actually in things like interest checklists or course checklists, there is no get title method anymore. And instead, what we do is we have in checklist.txt, we declare a object called title, and it can have 3 fields corresponding to the 3 states that this is. You can see also I created this enumerated type to get rid of those magic strings. It can have 3 fields in it corresponding to the 3 states. And so what we do in the constructor of any individual checklist item is we say, look, let's just, as we construct this, we'll just specify the 3 strings that the title can be, and update this field update this object where the field is the state and the value is the string. Okay, and then what we do is in checklist.txt, we re-implement our get title, okay, to just say, okay, we're going to return presentation. I made it markdown. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And we just insert the string. Okay, so we've just eliminated 10 instances of a get title method from all of those subclasses, replaced it with setting some strings in the constructor of those subclasses, and now get title, we just always call the superclass get title, and we extract what should be the title from this title, instance variable. Okay, very, very straightforward. So just to review, okay, first kind of one technique. If you're seeing a lot of repeated code and you happen to be in this situation where you've got a class and subclasses, think about ways to not have to override method in every single subclass. Is there a way that you can just use the superclass method wherever you need it? In this case, it was, I stored the state in the constructor. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing I noticed, okay, if we look, oh wait, I got to go back to the original branch. Okay, so the second thing, I started looking at these lower, these fields down here, the details and the actions part of each checklist item. And what I noticed was that all of them were returning a lot of markdown. Again, all very kind of similar to the get title, but more complicated markdown. Okay, so it depends. The get description. If you look at it, or get details. Get description is usually a string, but sometimes the get details would have future opportunities or I don't know, completed courses, it could be really anything or nothing in there, right? There could be a button in there, there could be all sorts of stuff in there. We don't really know what it is. So it's not just like, oh, we can store a string someplace and everything will be fine. We actually have, some more sophisticated React shenanigans going on in this. So my original simplified way of just storing a string in the superclass or in the state of the object and then having a single little piece of markdowns, not going to work. And so what I did for this was to recognize that if we look at here, we can see, okay, here's a button, and that button almost, is repeated all over the place. Okay, so this is just there's 3 button, kind of primitive button. This is semantic UI React called 3 places just in the interest checklist, and we have like 10 of these different checklist items. So button is called just all over the place. So the way to solve this one. And also you can see here's a dead giveaway, right? Button, size huge, color equals teal. Button, size huge, color equals teal. Button, size huge, color equals teal. Let's go look. Career goals, do we have any buttons in there? Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Button, size huge, color equals teal. Button, size huge, color equals teal. Okay, so, come on, man. This is a lot of. What if we wanted to make our button blue? What a pain. Go everywhere and try to find, or it shouldn't be huge. It should be medium, which is actually what I thought. I wanted to change that. I don't want to go find 37 instances of the string huge and change it to medium, right? So how do you do that? Well, this is where. Actually, I want to give a little plug for React and JavaScript because it's really nice to in this kind of scenario to be using a framework like React, because you can basically build little JavaScript helper classes or functional components that extract out the presentational part and enable you to use to separate the content from the presentation. So let me just go here. So let's go to see what I did in this case. Okay, so what's going to happen here is we have, let's just look at the buttons. Okay, so now what I implemented was a checklist button link and a checklist button action, which are buttons, okay, where and as you can see, I changed it to medium, right? But I kept it teal, I kept it. Where, the thing that changes is what is the link? What is the URL, right? But the icon is always going to be the same, and, the label will change. And for the action, you got to send in an on-click handler. So, that makes this a different kind of button. But look, now we've kind of done the same thing that we did before, which is we've separated out what's the same from what's different. But this time we've done that by creating a React component, which not only kind of enables us to dry the code, right? Don't repeat yourself. So we're not repeating the size equals huge or size equals whatever 37 times. We have that code exactly one place. And we use this component to actually refer to it. So if we look at interest checklist now, what we see is instead of all of those 37 buttons, we have 37 checklist button link calls, but they're much simpler calls because all we say is, I just need to know the URL that you want to go to when they press the button and what's the label that should appear in the button. Those are the only 2 things that change. In all of those 37 instances, everything else has been refactored out into this checklist button link. And there's somewhere else there's a checklist button action, which, kind of does the same thing. The other thing you'll notice in the code is you have this little colored little box here that surrounds it. And I said, okay, well, that's cool. Let me create an actions box. Okay. And that's, again, a functional React component, which basically says, okay, we need a div, and we need a grid column, and we need a mark, we need all that presentational stuff. And the only thing that changes is the description and then what's embedded inside. Okay, so here's what, it's pretty nice. I gotta say, man, I gotta say. So we have this actions box, all right, which is a React component, and then inside it, we put whatever the heck we want inside that box, and so we just embed within actions box the stuff that should go in, and anything could go in there, So in this case, we have two buttons up here. We just have a single button. It could be anything at all, but it will always have that kind of highlighted, indented box thing around it, no matter what you're putting in. So you get this nice uniformity, consistency in the way things appear. Plus, if you want to change that consistent look and feel, you go to exactly one place and make the changes, and everything will be updated. Okay, so that's our second cool thing, right? Create React components to separate content and presentation. And again, what I'm going to say, when separating content and presentation, that can be more or less difficult depending upon the framework that you're using. And it turns out when you're using JavaScript and React, it's actually, that's a really good framework for trying to do this. As opposed to the framework we were using before, which more had these kind of like, you'd write HTML and you'd embed like little template things inside to do stuff. Way harder to do this kind of thing when you've got that kind of framework. But with React, you get it. Okay, so the payoff. Okay, so that this all like sounds good, and we've we've separated all these things out, and there's less code, but who cares? And I'll tell you, it took me a few days. I mean, I didn't work full time on it or anything, but it took me three days maybe to do all of this stuff and edit all this code, and and I had the kind of the aesthetic, the personal growth feeling of, oh, I'm making this look nicer, and my personal aesthetic felt a lot better at the end. But like, do you really care? Okay. And the answer is, it turns out, again, I really did care, because at the end of the day, once I got into it, I thought, I don't know that this is the best way to present this information. It seems like, having to do all this scrolling, is kind of painful, and it's not really looks, very consistently with some of the other pages. So I don't know. I'd like to play around with a different way of presenting this information. And once I'd done all this refactoring, I tell you, literally, it took me 30 minutes to go ahead. I mean, it might have been an hour. I don't know, but it was not long. It was minutes rather than hours of work to create a fairly different looking, user interface to this page. So now we have this kind of card thing, and where depending upon, you can get 3 cards in a row if you need them, and the thing's mobile friendly. So if you make it small, it'll go to a single card. But I thought I would like the ability to kind of see more than just one of these checklist items. And really there was like 2 classes that I had to touch in order to change from the old way to the new way. Because basically now all of this, the way things would be laid out on the page was all abstracted out. Okay. And there weren't all these buttons with, all of the primitive layout components scattered all over those instances. So this was really, really simple to do. And ultimately that's powerful. Okay. When you're able to play around with the way things are presented really easily, that enables you to iterate faster. And in addition, if we want to implement a new checklist item, the person that implements that new checklist item is not thinking at all about the way things are going to be laid out. They are thinking only about what is the content that I need to find and represent in my checklist item, somebody else is going to worry about what the buttons look like and, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that's super cool, super useful in the long run. So the payoff of all this is, initially the UI design, doing UI design was really, really easy. Secondly, in the future, as we do more checklist items, that will also be easier. Okay. So I just want to return to this idea to conclude, okay? Because you can be very tempted as you start to, learn these kind of techniques for representing things, is to create these over-engineered solutions, which, which build in generality that you don't really need. And so I want to go back and say, Spike solutions are awesome. All right. I'm a big fan of writing, kind of junky code at the beginning because and basically, if we think about it, okay, how did the original folks do this? Okay. And what I suspect they did was, they created the career goals checklist and then they copied that file and renamed it, courses checklist. And then they just edited all the career goals to courses and, they figured out what was actually different. And then they made another copy, right? That's the way you do Spike solutions the fastest, is by violating one of the cardinal rules. Like you just copy paste code. Okay. So, I want to say, go out on a limb here and say that has its place in development, because that means you get to the point where you've got a system that has a behavior that people can look at and critique as fast as possible. Because maybe people looked at it and went, what, this isn't terrible and we want to go a completely different way. And the faster and less time you spend getting to the point where people can tell you, no, bad idea, the cheaper that experiment was. Okay, so Spike solutions, good thing. Once though you've looked at the Spike solution and said, yeah, I like this direction, then you spend a little time, in my case, it was like a few days to look at that code and go, okay, what are the parts that are the same? What are the parts that are different? How do we separate all that out? And then you get a nice system where you can iterate and you can move forward at a high velocity as well. All right, so there you go. Tales from the Software Engineering Trenches, episode 1. Maybe there'll be an episode 2. Hard to say. Maybe somebody else. Contribute your own episode. We could have a whole series by all sorts of different people with their software engineering experiences. All right. Aloha.